I'm John Evans, and welcome to another episode of One-on-One. Growing up in rural Brunswick County, Shaneequa Vereen had dreams of becoming a doctor one day. That ended, though, when Shaneequa realized she couldn't stand the sight of blood. After graduating from NC State University, Shaneequa took a leap of faith and moved from Raleigh to Houston, Texas, without a job. But things worked out. She applied for and got an internship with NASA, and that's led to a full-time job that has her in mission control for launches. So now, Shaneequa Vereen is helping to document the history of mankind's missions into outer space. And also, she's hoping to inspire the next generation of young ladies to dream big. Shaneequa Vereen, from SENC to NASA, welcome to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, Public Affairs Officer and live mission commentator for NASA. You know, when you walked across the stage at South Brunswick High School back in 2009 and received your diploma, of all the things that you could see yourself being, was working at NASA one of them?
No, you know what? I honestly never saw this coming. It was something that kind of it happened, growing up even in high school, it wasn't too much I heard about NASA. We heard about Columbia and we heard about the Challenger, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like a daily reminder. I think now I hear kids say like, oh, I want to be an astronaut, and oh, I want to do rocket science. And I'm like, that's great, because I'm like, at 11, I had no clue, about being an astronaut or working for NASA or a rocket scientist, just because I think it wasn't readily on our radar in Brunswick County.
When you got that diploma, what did you see yourself doing in a dozen years?
You know what? When I got the diploma, I had forever was like, oh, I want to be a doctor. So I knew I was going to college. I was going to be like pre-med, undergrad, and go on to be a doctor. I found out very quickly in undergrad that I did not like blood. And I was just like, doctor's out. I thought I could do it just because I love helping people, but I was like, nope, I don't like the sight of blood or guts or any of that stuff. So, so doctor is not going to work. So it all changed. And, a Southern quote is, tell God your plans, and he'll laugh, because I just knew forever since like the age of 10 or 11, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, and that did not, that did not happen.
To me, NASA is one of those really cool jobs. What's the coolest thing about working at a place like NASA?
You know what? NASA is a cool job. I tell everyone, hands down, best job I've ever had. But I think the most incredible thing about work for NASA is going to be the people. If you ever talk to a rocket scientist, or you ever talk to an astronaut and you just hear their stories and who they are and what they've done to become these amazing people, it kind of invigorates you and it makes you want to be a better person. Like, oh, I need to do a little more. I need to give a little more. I need to be, more caring and kind, because they're pretty extraordinary. Some of them I've dove in the deepest of oceans. I've climbed the highest mountains, and you're a Navy SEAL and you're a doctor and now you're an astronaut, it's kind of like, wow,
Yeah, really.
So they're really incredible people overall.
Well, the one thing I would think that would be neat would be, the saying that we've all heard, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Well, wait a second, I can walk down the hallway and ask one. That would seem to me to be pretty cool.
That is very cool. Very, very cool. And you have like millions, not millions, but I think Johnson Space Center alone has about 11,000 people that work for NASA. And, there's 9 other centers. And so there's thousands of people that work for NASA, and just being able to be like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of smart people here. I bet we could figure this out, and so that is very cool. It's like, hey, I know someone who knows this stuff.
I watched the pre-flight webcast for SpaceX when the Crew 1 launched in November. You're in mission control leading up to the rocket launch. You're saying things like everything is nominal to the audience of several million watching. Was there a whoa moment to all that? I mean, here you are in the headquarters of it all. You're speaking the space speak, and it's like I would be standing there and going, look at me.
You know what? It was the exact opposite. I was just like, oh my God, I can't mess up. Like that was that was what was running through my head. It was like so many millions of people are watching, and this was the biggest, this is the largest thing I've ever done for NASA, as far as like on a broadcast scale. And I knew it was going to be big because this was the first time we were launching from American soil in almost a decade, and so it was big. And we have great partners in SpaceX, and they wanted to roll out the red carpet for them, and they did. And we got together and we had a production, and we were like, wow, it's not just mission coverage, it's not just an operational mission control room today. It's literally like, we're giving it to you live. This is what's happening in here. And we had someone at Kennedy Space Center, and we also had someone at Hawthorne for SpaceX's mission control. And it was like, I can't be the person that messes this up, So.
Well, you did great. You did awesome. I mean, but to me, it would be like so intimidating being in there just at the, ground zero, if you will, of where everything is coming out of.
Yeah, it can be very intimidating. My boss, he's been in the game. He's been at NASA for about 36 years or so. He always is like, if you're not nervous, you're not doing it right, And so every time we have mission coverage, whether it's live on television or it's just a live audio of you covering something, he's just like, if you're not nervous, you're not doing it right. You should, always feel that sense of nerves, just because what you're doing is going out to the masses, and it is something very important, and so nerves are good. So
and even if it's not nerves, it's just that little butterfly effect in your belly.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That it's good. Nerves, that butterflies in there are good, because then you're on your game.
You're on your toes, and anytime it's a dynamic mission. Like everything can change, and you do this 100 times, but hey, the one off that something does go wrong, you need to be ready to respond as well. So it's definitely like a little nervous energy, but you keep it. It's good to have. So
in my childhood, Shaneequa, it was the Apollo missions. In your childhood, it was more about the shuttle missions, like you mentioned, Columbia, Challenger. But now this generation is going to learn about Artemis and learn about Perseverance. You're going to be part of the team literally writing history about what these missions and these people are doing. When you sit back and think about that, is that pretty daunting?
It is, it really is, because it's like, I never thought I know what I do is important, but I'm like, but what about the people that built the rocket? What about the people who are actually flying in space, But then it's like, it is your job as a public affairs officer, or even someone in communications for NASA, to spread the word, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we are a government agency. We depend on funding from the government. We depend on every year getting a budget rollout. Part of your job is to say, hey, we're doing all these great things, and we actually do need your help to continue to do them. So, we're funded by taxpayer dollars, so that is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, like, we're a government agency, and so it's daunting in the sense that not just history's been written, but it's just like, hey, my job is helping people to see what we're accomplishing and what we can accomplish in the future, just off of sheer publication and production and written documents. And it's just like, that's crazy to me,
Yeah, no.
my job can make or break something, you know what I mean? We had a administrator, and it was Jim Bridenstine, and he said the camera is the mission, his goal was 2024 to have boots back on the moon, the next man and the first woman. And so through that, he was just like, we're going to have millions, if not billions of people watching that, you know? And it's like, the camera is part of that mission. Like, and so having the voice and the face and everything that goes along with that, you know, it's a part of that mission. And so that always was like, a little, you know, like I'm a part of history, you know, like that, that's actually gonna be amazing.
Well, you know, I mean, let's look at things. Neil Armstrong, a one small step for man. That's living on, and Challenger, go for throttle up. I mean, those clips live on, and it could be something that Shaneequa says in one of her broadcasts or webcasts that people 40, 50 years may actually hear. So you are going to be part of history.
It's amazing to even think about, you know, like it's, I mean, it's ridiculous to think that, hey, I come from this small itty bitty town of Bolivia, North Carolina, and I had no aspirations of NASA, but, you know, I would say a little bit of luck and a lot of God, you know, was on my side. And you know, I ended up here and I'm thriving and people are noticing. And I'm just kind of like, wow, you know, who would have thunk it, you know, like, so it is actually amazing. And, you know, you put it in that light, like, maybe I will be a part of history, you know, like, you know, it is, you don't know, and it is possible. So,
okay,
hey,
I'm going to give you a situation. Someone walks down the hallway one day next week, knocks on the door of your office and says, we want you to go on the next mission. What do you say?
whew, wow. I'm gonna say yes, you know, I just, you hear stories, you know, and as much training and everything I know that would involve to go on the next mission, I know for a fact, like, to be able to see the earth from a different point of view, to be able to grasp all the life and research and developments that they're doing on the International Space Station or the moon, you know, all these, it's like that would be probably the most fulfilling thing, you know, of my life, you know. So I would say yes. I would be
Good for you.
terrified, but you know, we do scary things. So
Good for you.
I would
Because
still say yes.
I don't know if I'd be able to say yes. That's the thing. Oftentimes people get comfortable where they grow up. Where I grew up, a small town in Pennsylvania, I knew that I wanted to get out of that small town and I wanted to have adventures. And the things that my life has done, I could never feel more blessed than I am today. What drove you to want to leave Bolivia, North Carolina? You said you wanted to be a doctor, but you know, you went to NC State. You wanted to get out. You moved to Houston, and now you're at NASA. But there had to be that one thing that drove you to want to go to bigger places and do bigger things.
Yeah, John. I was like you. My dad always tells this story. He was like, you were a freshman in high school. You were 14, and I remember you telling me like, "Hey, once I leave, I'm never coming back." Like, and so I've always desired to be in a bigger space. I've always desired to be someone. You know what I mean? And I always felt like, is my town too small for that? You know what I mean? And so I think like you, it was just kind of like the adventures life have taken me on, and just simply being able to be like, I want a little more, you know, and see where that aspiration of a little more will take me. And a little more took me to Houston, you know, and so I initially still had no plans of working at NASA coming here, but I wanted a little more than what I was doing in Raleigh. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna go on a leap and a prayer and see how it works out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
most people don't know. I came down here with my best friend. She had co-opted for NASA, so she did an internship and she did back and forth for about 2 years, co-oping with NASA. And I never thought like, oh no, you know, like she's like this economics major and she knew she wanted to go into like procurement or be a business analyst, you know. And so she did really well in her internship and they offered her a job. So she was like, hey, I'm going to Houston, you know. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to Houston too, you know, like, let's go, you know, like I have no job yet. I have about 2 months of rent, you know, set aside. But I was just like, I have faith, you know, like I'm going to go and something great is going to happen, you know, like that's the kind of like feeling and like that's the momentum I felt like when it was time to go, like, cause I made that decision too. She had already been planning, had her furniture and stuff and everything shipped down. And it was probably 3 to 4 weeks before she was moving. And I was like, hey, I'm going to Houston. Like, this was great, but I want more, and
Yeah.
so,
My daughter Abby lives in Houston and she teaches in Houston and absolutely loves it. She is, I don't know if we'll ever get her back in North Carolina again. She loves that city and loves loves the kids she's teaching.
yeah, no, it's an amazing place to be honest with you. I always say like moving to Houston was the best decision I ever made. Um, and not even just the NASA aspect, every job I feel like I've had in Houston has kind of prepared me for the next role. So I am thankful. I am blessed. I know that for 100%, like fact, like that was the best move I could have made. And I know, like you said, it is scary to move away. It is, daunting. Like, what if I fail? You know what I mean? And so I always had it in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, like NASA, like failure is not an option. You know what I mean? And I was
Right.
just like, if I have to go work, I have a degree. I was like, if I have to go do something that it's not necessarily me for a year or two to figure things out, that's what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I was just like, failure, I'm not gonna fail. Like that was my mindset. I can't fail.
Who inspired you early in your education? Because let's face it, school can be tough, school can be daunting, especially if, middle school kids now and even high school kids now sometimes don't know what they want to be. I was the exception rather than the rule. I know I wanted to talk for a living. The good Lord blessed me with a big mouth. I knew I had to use it the right way. But who was an inspiration in your education that inspired you to reach for bigger things?
You know what? At an early age, I I had a craving for knowledge. Like I was always reading. I was always asking for, asking questions, a lot of questions. My parents always, they saw that inquisitive nature that I had, kind of like, I would be like, what is a bridge? I'm 4 or 5 years old, and like, well, how does it work? How do they build them if it's water beneath us, like, and so I was that very inquisitive kid, who always wanted to know a little bit more about everything. And so my parents, they understood that, and they saw that at an early age, and they kind of encouraged me, to do advanced classes. By the time I was in fourth grade, they pushed me to do algebra in middle school, and they pushed me to do AP courses in high school, and I even did dual enrollment, for community college as well in high school. So there was always that yearning to know more. And so I always say, like, I will be a lifetime learner. You never stop learning because there's always something you don't know, like, and so that I was that way. And my parents actually really pushed me to, yeah, you can do more, like, yeah, well, go ahead, and so um, them plus some very good teachers. Like I had teachers that were like, hey, you're very smart, like you can do a little more. They give me, the next grade up homework, or like, hey, we're going to learn this next week, but if I see you're sitting there kind of bored, like, so they would give me a little more. And so I had great teachers and great parents that really, they saw my need for more information and my desire to keep learning. And so they all kind of were like, okay, we're going to give it to you. So
Well, you moved to Houston. You told us about how you wanted to move to Houston, and you did. But when you moved down there, you actually got a master's degree, and you were working. Where did you find the time, or was
you
it that
know
drive that you wanted to improve yourself?
You know what? I look back now because I graduated in 2018 now, from having my master's degree. But I look back now and I'm like, how? Like it now baffles me because it's like I now feel like I have no time. You know what I mean? And so I look back and it's like, you know what? You can make time. Like there's some sacrifices that have to be made, of course. You know what I mean? But there there is time. Um, it was that betterment thing. So my thing was like, hey, I'm in a job, I'm making pretty great money for my age, but I was just kind of like, this is the career I want forever. And so out of that, contemplation and self-reflection came you know what, I do want to have a master's degree. And if I ever do decide to leave Houston, I want to be able to bring a little more to the table. I want to have enough on my resume that it's not just career, it's not just experience, but she is also very educated. And so I looked into a couple different schools and universities. And so I decided to go into the business program for University of Houston. Um, it was it was daunting, to say the least. Like, you go from, because I had already been working and out of school probably uh, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, adding
You
it all
know,
up, it was probably about 4 or 5 years.
yeah, it was. I was already, on to like my second career type job, and so I was just kind of like, oh man, this is this is gonna be a toll. So it was like from 7 to 4, or 7:30 to 4:30. I went to work every single day, and from 6 to 9 during the regular school year, I was on campus in a class 3 to 4 days a week, and
Wow.
then um, summer school. I did summer school because after you do the first semester or two, you're like, how fast can I do this? You're like,
Yeah.
when can I get my life back, And so I did end up completing my, it's like a 22, 24 month course. I ended up completing in about 18 months because I kind of was like, yeah, what can I do? And so I did summer school. I did a study abroad. Um, I studied abroad in China and got 2 business certificates, while I was in my MBA
Yeah.
for leadership development and global management. And so um, did China, and it was a shortened study abroad. It was I want to say 2.5, 3 weeks, and we did Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So it was another like, how do I have time? Like
And you were
um,
able to get the time away from work to do all of that?
yeah, you know what? By the time I actually did a study abroad, I was a new co-op or intern for NASA. So I actually told them in the interview process, as well as like when they gave me my final offer, hey guys, I am in grad school. I do have study abroad coming up within the first few months that I'm going to be working with you guys. It's only 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and um, I hope that's okay, and they agreed. They were like, yes, we understand education's important. We get it. And they gave me the time off. So,
Yeah, I'm sure it would have
um,
been a little different if you said, hey, look, I'm going to the beach for 2 weeks. But if you're studying abroad for your MBA, I would think that people would say, call us as soon as you get back. You've got a spot reserved here.
100%. That's exactly right. I'm sure, a vacation wouldn't have been the same, the same reception that I got. But yes, as a part of my MBA program, they already knew when I signed up for this job, that I had a study abroad coming and that it would be a couple of weeks. And they were gung ho. They were like, sure thing, like you take the time off. You can either go in what's called like LWOP, which is like leave without pay type of situation, or you could use your annual leave for this type of thing. And so they gave me multiple options to do, and it all ended up working out. So
I'm going to ask you this question. I can remember the first full time job I had in TV. One of the things that made me feel like I was a success, and this is going to feel strange or sound strange, was that the TV station where I worked, they allowed us to buy station swag for family if we wanted to. We could buy all the sweatshirts and everything else, and we can send them or give them as gifts if we wanted to. And the first year I was down there, I got sweatshirts and t-shirts and hats for every member of my family for Christmas. And I was like, okay, I'm in it. I made it. Tell me about maybe one of those first times you talked to family at home after getting the job at NASA, or talk to a friend and you're like, I think I've made it.
you know what? It is absolutely nuts because I think like this past I've been working for NASA 2.5 years now. I feel like this past 6 months have been those like aha, like I've made it moments, And it's not even just like doing the launches and such, but it's more like I now have a platform to not just, share what NASA's doing, but, I always tell everyone like I've never thought I would be in a speaking role for NASA. I never thought I would be a face for NASA. Those things kind of happen. But I also, with George Floyd dying and Black Lives Matter movement and those things happening right now, and even last year during the pandemic, um, it made me be like, hey, I have a voice and a platform. And as a Black woman from a small itty bitty town in rural North Carolina, pretty much, I was like, it is important for people to see me, um, for little girls, little boys, brown people in general. I feel like there's not a lot of people that look like me that work for NASA, or not that don't work for NASA, but the ones that are on TV. You don't see a lot of, and so I thought it was very important to have me represent. And so that was, I had an email, and it was from a complete stranger who just kind of found my email, and she was just kind of like, I'm so proud of you, and she basically was like, I never thought, that I would see someone who looked like me, on the television for NASA. And she was like, and I've always been a NASA nerd, and I, made Jemison as my hero and all these great things, but she was just kind of like, I am so proud of you. She was a complete stranger, and that made me feel like, wow, I
You
really,
probably felt about 10 or 12 stories tall.
yeah, I was like, just by being me and, on the platform that I have for NASA, I was just kind of like, that made me feel like I made it, I'm doing something worthwhile, and so I think the past 6 months and having those type of interactions with people have really been those moments for me, like, oh, I made it.
Well, you've actually taken me into where the next couple of questions I have are. I've always found, Shaneequa, that people don't set out to be inspirational. It kind of happens through the daily job that they do and what they put into a job and their accomplishments. So as you're driving in every day, are you like, I'm an inspiration for others, or do you leave that for other people to judge?
Yeah, I leave it for other people to judge. You know what? Like I said, like for me, the nerves and all that I had was because I was just like, all eyes are on me. You know what I mean? And again, I had that aspect of like, hey, if I mess up now, when is the next time we'll see a Shaneequa on, on the broadcast from NASA? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
all those things were in the back of my head. But you know what? I had people in my corner that were just like, you're great. You got this. You know what I mean? And hey, let the rest of that fall off your shoulders. That's not your, weight to bear. And so to me, I leave it up to other people, because I want to do my job. I want to be great at anything I do. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
um, if you see that and you can relate or you feel inspired, that is amazing. That's what I'm hoping for. But if you don't and you're just kind of like, oh, that was okay. That's fine too. So I
Right.
always leave it up to other people to decide.
Yeah,
Um,
you almost, if you're trying, then you're not really focused on what you do to be an inspiration. You know what I'm trying to
right.
say? And I think if you're
Yes,
focused on being the
100%.
best person you can, then others are going to say, wow, Shaneequa Vereen is working at NASA, and she came from a town of 2,600 people in rural North Carolina. If she can do it, I can do it.
Exactly. Exactly. That is my sentiment is exactly, John. Like 100%, that was my thought was like, hey, if I can show one little girl, one little boy that, hey, you can have a name as unique as Shaneequa, you can have brown skin, you can have, curly hair, you can have all these things that, for a little while that weren't seen as professional, like, like, so you can be those things and still be good enough. You can still be at a place where you're like, I can inspire others.
And
So
have you talked to young girls? I imagine see tours come. Well, maybe not as much with the pandemic now, but do you get a chance to talk to young ladies? And what do you say to them? What advice do you give to them when you do get the chance to talk to them?
yeah, so like you said, the pandemic has slowed a lot of touring and all those things down for NASA. But yes, even before the pandemic, before I was in a spotlight or any of those things. We did do tours. We also had a year of education on station where students would write in or call in, and they would get their school or their class to speak to people on station and that sort of thing. And so part of those things would be writing back and, those type of things. If you didn't get selected this year, whatever, the case may be. But I would always say, like, keep going, like STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics usually kind of fall off for women, for young girls by, 6th or 7th grade. And so it's just like, if you're interested in science now and you think NASA's cool and you want, to be a rocket scientist or an engineer, keep going. You know what I mean? Some people are going to tell you no, or you're, this may be too hard for you, or, those type of things. But it's kind of like, don't lose focus, and that was one of the great comments that I had a biology teacher that told me that, like, don't lose focus, because that's what happens, you know what I mean? Like, and it could be, home stressors, it could be life stressors, it could be school begins to be harder, and you might like, I can't do this, but overall, don't lose focus, keep going. You hear no, keep going, persevere.
What's one thing from North Carolina that you miss?
Man, you know what? I miss Bojangles. I don't know if I can say that. I miss Bojangles, and I miss our barbecue, because Texas has good brisket and things like that, but we have a vinegar-based sauce versus like a ketchup-based. And I always tell people, I'm like, this is okay, but you haven't had North Carolina barbecue, and so they all look at me kind of crazy, but I'm like, it's different, and they do more like cow versus pig, you know what I mean? Like I want like a pulled pork sandwich, like, and so with that vinegar-based barbecue sauce. So probably the food. Like Houston has.
I was thinking most people would say barbecue. Are you trying to give a North Carolina flair to NASA? Are you proud NC State grad? Are you proud growing up on the coast of North Carolina?
Oh, 100%. I tell everyone, and anytime there's two of us in a room, like, oh, you went to NC State or you're from North Carolina, we're always like, yeah, like, and so, yes, I'm very proud. And I always tell people, oh yeah, like, they're like, oh, where'd you go to school? And I'm like, I went to NC State, Wolfpack, and so even when we're playing Texas teams, and I lived here for almost 7 years now, I'm like, oh no, I'm rooting for North Carolina. That's the home team, so 100%. I'm always proud. Anyone asks, I'm like, oh no, I'm from North Carolina. Apparently I have an accent down here. And I thought that was strange, because I was like, I have an accent, you have an accent, and so I always tell people, oh, I'm from North Carolina. They're like, where are you from? You don't sound Texan, you don't sound like you're from here. And I'm just like, I'm from North Carolina.
Well, I think you are a great story. And I think it's cool that you got the chance to do that webcast for that Crew One launch, because I think that again shows that you've gotten there and that you're trying bigger things. And I think that's always good. Like you said, try new things. You're not going to learn. If you fall short, you get up, you dust yourself off, and you do it again.
100%, John. That's always been my philosophy, because you're not going to be great at everything, but if you can keep striving and keep going after you fall, that's what builds character.
No, you're an inspiration to people not only in southeastern North Carolina but all across the country. Good to see you, and continued success to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, John.
A big thank you to Shaneequa Vereen for taking time out of her very busy schedule to join us for this week's podcast interview. You can reach out to her at nasa.gov. And NASA also has a streaming TV channel on that same website. And on the NASA YouTube page, you can see the video from last November when Shaneequa was in mission control and doing commentary for the Crew One launch to the International Space Station. She did a great job. Go check it out. Now, if I can ask you a favor, please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. The more feedback we have from people like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks for joining us for this episode of One on One.